This is Deek's Diner, or it used to be Deek's Diner. It's the last time I was up here was a few months ago, but it seems to have been closed in the meantime. Now, if you're an Elvis Presley fan, the name Deek's Diner will have a certain meaning to you. But if you're not an Elvis fan, then, well, it's been here years and years and years, and now it's being demolished. It's quite a landmark in Dublin, in the Docklands area. There you are. It's quite windy here. Quite windy, let me see. Now, for some reason or other, I can only see half of the screen here. So I'll have to make do with it. Now, yesterday or the day before, you had elections, local elections in Northern Ireland, well, in Britain, but also in Northern Ireland. I get in here now because I can't really see the screen with the sunlight over there. Anyhow, there were elections in the north of Ireland, and Sinn Féin did quite well. They got 28% of the votes, which means that they're the kingmakers, so to speak, now. Now, Mary Lou MacDonald and various other Sinn Féin leaders, they declared that a top priority will be to start working towards a united Ireland. Now, it'll take quite a few years, but they're going to go for it now with a vengeance. And it struck me as, you know, this is an interesting situation if, let's say, you're a nationalist. Now, if most nationalists would want a united Ireland, but given the fact that Sinn Féin and all the other major woke political parties, they also want a united Ireland. You know, that should make you think for a moment. You know, if you find yourself on the same side as all the woke parties who want to destroy Ireland. But I got thinking about that, and, you know, it seems to me that, let's say if you were a Catholic nationalist, it seems to me that you've got far more in common with an Ulster Unionist than you do with the vast majority of Irish people. And maybe there should be an alliance, a serious alliance, between anti-woke people in the south and serious unionist people in the north. Now, I get the impression, and I'm not an expert on this, but my impression is that there are individual, let's say, Catholic nationalists who are finding themselves sort of on the same side as Ulster Unionists, and that there are little alliances being formed. But you know, something I think Catholics or nationalists or conservatives, people who are opposed to wokeism, people who want to preserve Ireland, I think it's a serious thing now going into the future, you know, creating an alliance with Ulster Unionists. Now, I'm sure there are woke Ulster Unionists, but the hardcore would certainly not be woke. So it's an interesting sort of dilemma. It would be difficult for a lot of, let's say, Irish people in the Republic in Ireland, in the south of Ireland, particularly nationalists, it would be difficult to have an alliance with Ulster Unionists, but you know, extraordinary times sometimes call for extraordinary actions. But yes, it's an interesting situation, and it got me thinking further about the broader question of nationalism. You know, one of my problems I have with Irish nationalism and republicanism and all that is that it's not as simple as these people often make it out. Take, for instance, the idea of the Patriot dead, all the people who died for Ireland. Now, there is an assumption that these were all the good guys or the good girls. And that's not quite as straightforward and obvious as you might think. Consider, oh God, my head's just gone, oh, this is ridiculous. The war, Ukraine, that's it. I've forgotten the name, Ukraine. If you consider Ukraine, there are a lot of Ukrainians who are dying. They would insist, they would say they're risking their life, they're giving up their lives to protect Ukraine. But of course the reality is that most of these people are woke to a greater or lesser degree. They're looking to Europe. They see their future as part of a cosmopolitan sort of Europe. And the threat they see from Russia, really, it's not that Russia is going to take the Ukraine over or anything like that. They don't want that Russian world. They don't want that traditional European culture. They want the new, sexy, diverse, inclusive culture. And of course, behind that is they want the affluence that goes with it. And these people who are now fighting for Ukraine, they remind me very much of, if you think back to Brexit, I can remember on the day that the results came in, you have the television cameras, they went onto university campuses, and most of the university students were raging mad. They were really, really angry that working class British people had managed to get their Brexit. And they talked about racism and all of that, but it was obvious listening to these, but they also spoke a lot about Europe and, we won't be able to travel here, we won't be able to travel there, and I wanted to go to France to do this degree, all that sort of stuff. And listening and watching those people, it was obvious that they weren't concerned about liberalism or anything like that. It's just that they associated the EU, Europe, the inclusive society, they associated that with the wealthy, privileged position they had. And if the truth be told, that's what's really behind the attraction people feel towards Europe. It's got nothing to do with European ideals or actual liberalism or tolerance or inclusion. It has to do with wealth. The wealth is in Europe. If you want to be one of the wealthy people today, if you want to do well, you have to be a good European. So it's really just self-interest. But anyhow, I'm waffling off the point. No. But yes, I was thinking of those young people, and this was the day after the Brexit result came in, and they were raging. They were practically frothing at the mouth. They were really, really angry. And they didn't say it in plain English, but it was obvious that they had a contempt for working class people. And their attitude was, how dare these uneducated people take us out of Europe. So, and these people in the Ukraine, their anger strikes me as being the same. It's not really an anger against Russia as such. It's their rage and anger that a Russian, let's say, dominance in the region is preventing them from becoming European. I expressed that badly. But anyhow, most of these people who are being labelled as patriots in the Ukraine, who are nominally or apparently risking their lives for Ukrainian independence, what they really want is they want to be part of the EU. They want all of that. And in the process, they will destroy Ukraine. And, oh yes, and this brings us back to the situation in Ireland. You know, there are one of the problems I have with Irish nationalism, and I'm talking about my experience of it growing up, one of the problems I've always had is this simplistic notion of nationalism. You know, British bad, Irish patriots good, all this sort of thing. But when you look at Irish patriots and the Patriot dead, you've got to ask yourself the question: exactly what were they dying for? You know, the people who gave up their life fighting the British. Exactly what sort of an Ireland did they want to create? And for instance, let's say Sinn Féin or the IRA. Would I like to live in an Ireland governed by the IRA? Absolutely not. It wouldn't be a good Ireland. And so when you look at all these patriots, you've got to say, okay, you know, simplistic view is that they're wonderful people sacrificing their lives for Ireland. But exactly what sort of Ireland were they sacrificing their lives for? And I genuinely don't believe that these patriots gave a damn about Ireland. These Republicans and patriots and most of these nationalists. I don't believe that for a second. Not for a second. But as usual, I'm expressing myself badly. But certainly this political situation now with Sinn Féin moving seriously towards a united Ireland. Now it will take probably 10 years, and there'll be a lot of stuff will have to be done in between to prepare the ground. But all parties will come together on this, and it seems to be an unstoppable historic force, and that maybe in 10 years' time Ireland will be united. But is that a good thing? Am I in favour of a united Ireland now? Absolutely not. Do you want to? You see, if Ireland became united tomorrow, it means Ulster Unionists would become more or less irrelevant as a political force. Now, with Ireland divided, with the northern 6 counties, well, unionism is a very significant force. And it's a significant force that is fundamentally anti-woke. Now, as I've said, I'm sure there are unionists who have bought into this woke thing, but at the heart of it, no, it's an anti-woke thing. So for Ireland to become united tomorrow, it would mean the unionists as a political force would be greatly lessened, and the woke political force is greatly strengthened. So again, I'm waffling and not expressing myself well, but it's not, you know, for those who believe in a united Ireland, it's not as simple as that. And at this moment, you've got to think, you know, do you seriously want a united Ireland? Do you want an Ireland that's stronger, politically more cohesive, a woke Ireland like that? You know, that's, if you want to preserve the old Ireland and Western civilization, that's not a good thing. But Now, I don't claim to have a monopoly on the truth or a unique, special, valuable insight into all this. But I think the nationalist narrative, the patriotic, nationalist narrative, I think it's simplistic, to say the least. And I don't for a second, all of these people down the years fighting for Ireland, I don't believe for a second that any of those people gave a damn about Ireland. And when I look at the great figures from Irish history, I don't see those all as great people. One person I've always despised was Michael Collins. Would I like to live in an Ireland run by Michael Collins? Oh no. No, not for a second. And of course, if Michael Collins was alive today, he'd probably be a good multiculturalist, woke person. And that's another thing that irritates me about a lot of people who are nationalists. They have this really naive idea that if Patrick Pearse and James Connolly and all these people were alive today, they'd be fighting for Ireland. It's like people in Britain who, they think of the soldiers who died in World War II and fought and all of that. If those soldiers were living in England today, if they'd been born in my time, most of them would be woke. Things are, you have to think about these things. It's very easy to look at all the heroes from the past and saying, oh, they were great people. But you've got to think realistically, if they were born today in this environment with the same influences, would they uniquely stand out from the rest? From the woke people? No. But as I say, I'm not an expert. I don't claim to be an expert. I don't claim to have a particularly great insight into any of this. But what I do know, and what I can say emphatically, is that this, God Save Ireland and all our problems are caused by the British. This is wrong. It's bad. And it's harmful to Ireland. And I will be making a video. I said in a previous video, I'll be making a video about John Mortars. And I'll be talking more about it then. Because I greatly admire John Mortars, but I disagree with him when it comes to the national question, nationalism and all of that. Anyhow, they're just my thoughts on the latest news. It's roundabouts. There are people who write books about roundabouts. I suppose they're interesting things to just sit by a roundabout and watch the world go by. But to get back to Deke Steiner, yes, this has been a landmark. If you go up, this is Dockland. All over here is Dockland. And so a lot of the container trucks and all that, they would come up this way on their way to the docks. And one of the places they would stop would be at Deke Steiner's. And the last time I was up here, I think it was about 3 months ago, and it was still in business. So, and as I said, if you were an Elvis Presley fan, you'll be familiar with the name Deke Steiner. Anyway, so that's it. Deke Steiner closing. Another landmark on. And I think a lot of people out there will miss it.